Episode number 14. Kay had decided he would do more watching than talking, so he did not defend himself for supposedly having come late, and simply said, "Well, maybe I have arrived late, I'm here now." There followed loud applause, once more from the right-hand side of the hall. "Easy people to get on your side," thought Kay, and was bothered only by the quiet from the left-hand side, which was directly behind him, and from which there was applause from only a few individuals. He wondered what he could say to get all of them to support him together, or, if that were not possible, to at least get the support of the others for a while. "Yes," said the man, "but I'm now no longer under an obligation to hear your case." There was once more a muttering, but this time it was misleading as the man waved the people's objections aside with his hand, and continued, "I will, however, as an exception, continue with it today. But you should never arrive late like this again. And now, step forward." Someone jumped down from the podium so that there would be a place free for Kay, and Kay stepped up onto it. He stood pressed closely against the table. The press of the crowd behind him was so great that he had to press back against it, if he did not want to push the judge's desk down off the podium, and perhaps the judge along with it. The judge, however, paid no attention to that, but sat very comfortably on his chair and, after saying a few words to close his discussion with the man behind him, reached for a little notebook, the only item on his desk. It was like an old-school exercise book, and had become quite misshapen from much thumbing. "Now then," said the judge, thumbing through the book. He turned to Kay with the tone of someone who knows his facts, and said, "You are a house painter?" "No," said Kay. "I am the chief clerk in a large bank." This reply was followed by laughter among the right-hand faction down in the hall. It was so hot that Kay couldn't stop himself joining in with it. The people supported themselves with their hands on their knees, and shook as if suffering a serious attack of coughing. Even some of those in the gala were laughing. The judge had become quite cross, but seemed to have no power over those below him in the hall. He tried to reduce what harm had been done in the gala, and jumped up threatening them. His eyebrows, until then hardly remarkable, pushed themselves up, and became big, black and bushy over his eyes. The left-hand side of the hall was still quiet, though. The people stood there in rows with their faces looking towards the podium listening to what was being said there. They observed the noise from the other side of the hall with the same quietness, and even allowed some individuals from their own ranks, here and there, to go forward into the other faction. The people in the left faction were not only fewer in number than the right, but probably were no more important than them, although their behavior was calmer, and that made it seem like they were. When Kay now began to speak, he was convinced he was doing it in the same way as them. "Your question, my lord, as to whether I am a house painter, in fact even more than that, you did not ask at all, but merely imposed it on me, is symptomatic of the whole way these proceedings against me are being carried out. Perhaps you will object that there are no proceedings against me. You will be quite right, as there are proceedings only, if I acknowledge that there are. But, for the moment, I do acknowledge it, out of pity for yourselves to a large extent. It's impossible not to observe all this business without feeling pity. I don't say things are being done without due care, but I would like to make it clear that it is I who make the acknowledgement.